I think like 10 years ago, I never would have imagined the proliferation of smartphones and GoPros. Or maybe 15 years ago. I've only been shooting photos for about 10 years. And I'd say 10 years ago is really when like GoPros and smartphones and stuff really took off. And even then the quality was so low, I wouldn't have seen it, where they've just become everyone's tool, you know, everywhere constantly. And I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's not so much, I mean, there's, photography is kind of like fine art, you know, films and movies and stuff, where there has always been and will always be a niche, but the vast majority of people just want to consume content that's interesting and happens rapidly. And so this is a evolution. It's not a revolution. And you look at the way that everyone's now armed with the camera, and like if you took the 100 most amazing moments that happened in 2019 that were captured, like 15, 20 years ago, it'd all be by AP and Reuters photographers. And now last year, it was probably 99% by people with iPhones and GoPros. And there's still so much room and space for beautiful photos and photojournalism and fine art photography and stuff. But it's kind of the niche of it has been more clearly defined. And then the rest of the world of photography has been democratized by literally every single person having a 10 megapixel camera in their hand now. So I don't think it's not going to change in the way that like a lot of photographers say it's doom and gloom. I think it's like the niche of good photography is more clearly defined. And then the amount of content being created by the general public, the billions of people on this planet who all now have smartphones, is just greater, stronger, and more prevalent. And then that's where Instagram and social media is just this like vessel to share that media immediately.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. Today's guest is Morgan Maassen. He's a world-renowned photographer who has been shooting surfing, and when I mean surfing around the world, I mean like the most beautiful, exotic, incredible destinations that just captivate the mind. I don't know, it's like fine art prints, if you will. It looks like paintings half the time. And whenever his photographies come up over the years, I've just been mesmerized. And we connected several years ago when I just reached out to him directly about licensing exclusively his photography for my marketing, and I just made a connection with him, and I've been following him ever since. And now I'm going to be doing a little more content with him going into my relaunch of Groundswell Origins. And we do a deep dive. We talk a little bit about photography and its role in marketing. I mean, Morgan he's been around some of the top athletes in the world, not just shooting, you know, Kelly Slater and surfing, but also other working with advertising agencies and working with other large brands and sports and individuals all around the world. So he brings just a wealth of insight, just an incredible human being. And, I can't say enough about the guy. The guy is like a little soft-spoken, and but just the depth of just wisdom, and it just gets you so stoked to hear some of his adventures. Without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Morgan Maassen.
How's it going?
Well, hello. Hey, super great to have you on the show. Let's get into it. So, Morgan, you're traveling the world, or you were up until COVID, filming, shooting, you know, surf and lifestyle and everything else. And what are you doing right now? Like, what has COVID done, and where are you, you know, like what are you doing right now?
Really nothing's changed for me, except for I'm not traveling domestically or internationally beyond California. Our shoots are starting to pick back up. There was a 2 to 3 month hiatus where there was no photo or video shoots beyond, like, I do a lot of fine art commissions for interior designers and art buyers and clients and stuff, like whether it's a photo of a palm tree or a wave or mountains or something. And so that was pretty stable. But as far as larger commercial shoots, working for like bigger brands and like the beer and the car realm and stuff, and traveling and having sets with producers and catering and everything, that just completely was canceled. So the shoots are starting to come back. They're smaller, they're a lot leaner and meaner, and they're kind of logistical nightmares. But it's also, when I'm shooting, it's quite nice because instead of 10, 20, 30 people on set, it's usually 1 to 3. And those are all happening and being moved to be in California, like anywhere from central San Francisco to Los Angeles or Orange County. And then aside from that, like probably 50, 60% of my business has always been stock imagery, like photo and video. And so that actually was cranking when all productions were on hiatus or canceled. And then it's just stabilized as it has always been before. So it's just a little bit of everything as per usual, just no traveling beyond, I'm just not flying or going anywhere outside the country.
So all that surf travel type photography internationally is sort of on pause right now. What was the
Definitely.
last?
Yeah. I personally, oh,
I
sorry.
was going to say, what was the last one you did?
The last this year I was in Santa Cruz, shooting a little project with Noah Wegrich for O'Neill in January, and Hawaii with Honolulu Blomfield in this was all January. And then February I was working February and most of the first 2 weeks of March I was in New York and just in post-production on a couple projects, and basically no shooting whatsoever. And I did a quick trip to Iceland to shoot freediving underneath the frozen lake. And aside from that, yeah, I'd say it was probably first 2 weeks of January was the last surfing I've shot.
Okay, I got to
Between Hawaii
pause. You were shooting underwater freediving under a frozen lake. Were you like in a scuba gear?
No, just free diving. So I was in a dry suit, or kind of similar to a dry suit, but without like the it's a bit it's hard to explain. I was in a kind of like a really thick specialized wetsuit, but I had no scuba gear, nothing, just a weight belt, nothing
Oh, so
else. So completely free
you dive a
diving.
lot. Like your
Coming up
background has
for air
been
every time.
spearfishing and stuff, correct?
Yeah, so I grew up like diving, spearfishing, just free diving. My dad's a sea urchin diver and stuff. So I have a lot of experience with not actually not tanks, but it's called a hookah system. It runs off a compressor, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
hose, and you have a lot more agility. But this was completely uninhibited by anything whatsoever. I literally just had a weight belt to give me some neutralize my buoyancy a bit more, considering I had a big housing too.
And the lake is completely frozen on top of you, so there's like a little porthole.
Yeah. Yeah, the ice on top was like probably a third of a meter thick. It was insane, and we just chainsawed a hole through it to get in.
Doesn't that freak you out?
Yeah, it was really scary.
Yeah,
Probably the most scared I've ever been in my entire life at a couple certain points.
really. And I would assume that a story of an encounter with a shark or something would be that example.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a lot of experience in the ocean and familiarity with it. I mean, I'm never 100% comfortable in big waves around sharks. It's impossible to be that
Mm-hmm.
calm. But this was different. I have very little experience. I mean, I've snowboarded a few times, and I love snowboarding. But as far as frozen rivers and lakes, that's something that was not in my childhood, and I don't have any comfort level around it, let alone being under it. Was probably I don't have claustrophobia, but it basically was completely and utterly claustrophobic, where you're in this huge frozen lake, and the only access point is about the size of a manhole,
Mm-hmm.
and at certain points you lose sight of that manhole, and it was just deathly terrifying.
Dude, that is so crazy. And I've seen so many of your photography and just can't imagine the travels you've been on. And I also would think that just the style of photography you have, that Iceland would be just maybe above the surface, and I'm sure the photos below the surface pretty magical, because it's kind of like in the images I see, they seem very dreamy, and which is kind of the only way I can describe your photography. How would you describe your photography?
That's a great question. I I think my photography is kind of all over the place. Like it has a very certain
Hmm.
aesthetic that a lot of people, or even myself, kind of like it all looks homogenous to me, maybe, I
It
guess.
does.
But at
There's
the
a
same time,
signature feel of your photography, 100%.
yeah, and I think that's like I can't really help that, but like when I personally look at my photography, I see it as being just completely all over the place. And some photos are just really minimal, some photos are really contrasty. A lot of my photos just study textures and colors, and it's really disjointed. So I look at other photographers that have like very streamlined bodies of work and aesthetics, and I really admire them. And I look at my own, and it doesn't look like that. So it's kind of like I think there's a discrepancy where upon which you look at your own work, it's totally different from others. And so I don't know. I guess I consider my own work just like a big old random collection of photos.
And see, that's funny because I look at the difference. So like going from like a wave to two people walking down the beach, each one of them is like a story to me. Like I always feel like I can find a story in it.
Oh, cool.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
something going on that I'm present to that's different. And it's a different way of
Yeah.
looking at that moment. And for me, for marketing, that's what I think when I first saw your work, the one that just blew me away was this one. It's the one of the very first ones I licensed from you. It's the it's it's the one with the wave. It is single. It's all by itself, and it's just breaking out. It looks like it's like just breaking out in the middle of the ocean or something, and it's just one wave.
Mhm. Yeah.
Where was that?
That was in North Stradbroke Island in Australia. It's like a island several, maybe like an hour north of
Uh-huh.
Brisbane, I think. And you take a ferry out to it, and it's just this really long. No, actually, it's below Brisbane, above the Gold Coast, and you take a ferry out to it. And it's just this long kind of deserty island covered in shrubbery, and there's a little community there, and that wave was like one of the outer reefs that just are off that community, in this open ocean sort of.
Yeah, it just looks like a wave that just came out of nowhere. So, when I first saw that image and they started going into your body work and I saw your style, that was one of the things that, really interested me in trying to connect with you back. Must have been like 3 or 4 years ago when we first started talking. And just this style was like exactly that. I felt like I could actually build a story around my brand that was congruent with the way that you were presenting your photos. So I've just always admired your photography and I love surf photography and art overall. And the one question I have always wanted to ask you is like, when you're coming up with some of those, like setting up a frame, like is it just that is there so many pictures you're taking and that's just the one picture, or are you kind of waiting and planning for it, or what's your process for putting together a shot that ends up being one you license or one you work with, like one of the brands you work with or whatever?
It's 50-50. It's like, I mean, like if I'm shooting photos, if I'm not on a commercial photo shoot, shooting brand and product, what I do is some days I'll spend days or weeks trying to get one photograph. Like for example, that lonely wave I waited probably 5 days for. I knew the spot, the wave, the lighting, the conditions, everything I wanted. I just waited, and I think it was like the fourth evening or something of waiting
So you
for it.
had an idea. Yeah, that's what I'm
Exactly,
thinking.
and I wanted the sky to be dark and these like afternoon storms and the wave to be perfect and light offshore, and also just the wave to be breaking right with the tide and the conditions on this reef. And so that one I waited so patiently for. Whereas other times, like there'll be just minutes in a day where the lighting's crazy or there's something really beautiful is happening, and I just take uh 10, 20, 50, 100 photos, in the course of 15, 25 minutes, however long this moment happens, because I'm just trying out constantly different compositions and angles and whatever, experimenting with it. So it just totally varies, like for example, there was this in December, I was on the beach at Pipeline and there's this crazy storm. And for 5 minutes, there was just unreal otherworldly lighting. And so I took like, I don't know, maybe 30 photos in this 5 minutes, and each one is very different than the last. whether it's the amount of people in the shot or the composition or the colors or how under overexposed it was. And it like that was just like like I could not have imagined that moment not a minute prior before it started, whereas like I said with that wave photo, I uh, meditated that for days. So it varies, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think you and I, when we talked the first time, I think I mentioned to you that, for 12 years, I had a film production company called Laundromat Studios, and my whole focus was on backcountry, cat skiing, heli skiing. And I can really appreciate the whole weight gain that you had for that photo, and also the opportunity of lighting. Because in heli skiing, sometimes your whole shoot happens in a matter of minutes. The best stuff, because now you're like, get everybody down right now. Let's go. The lights here, because it's so fickle in the mountains. And then there's other times, whether it's some of the shots that we take, the time to set up would be so long, and it would only take like 2 seconds in a film or something, 2 to 5 seconds, and people, and it was hard to edit out. I don't know if this is a question I have for you. I do the editing. I did a lot of the editing for Laundromat. And sometimes I would force a piece of content in because it wasn't perfect, but man, I just knew how long we suffered to get it. And I just wanted to see the light of day for the amount of energy we put into it. Do you ever get that at all, or no?
Absolutely. And it's like you have so much sentimentalism baked into stuff, moments like that, or clips or photos and stuff. And it's tricky, but that's where it's like you kind of have to separate church and state and make editing and your personal, emotional, intellectual, and fiscal investments into the shoot and the production totally separate from the final product sometimes. And that's like a creative conversation you have to have in every facet of editing. Editing is the art of not showing someone something, but not showing them something.
Mm-hmm.
What doesn't make the floor, what doesn't make the final shot is usually more important than what actually does in like a weird kind of twisted way.
Yeah, well, it's like editing words, copywriting.
Yeah,
same thing.
absolutely.
So when you're editing, your process for editing, I'm sure some of your edits, people would be like, "Why are you getting rid of that?" Well, they might view it as being just an amazing photo. What is your criteria? Like, how do you go through that editing process, and how do you be disciplined to not try to throw up everything, and try to be really maintain whatever brand level you want?
I have no clue, to be honest.
So it's my gut.
Sometimes my most popular and favorite photos of other people are usually the ones I just don't even care about, and the ones I like, to be honest, I don't really share because I like them so much. They're very personal to me, and so I don't know. It's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes it's funny when I'm trying to make photos or something for like a client or to be public facing. I do sometimes have to visualize what other people aside from myself would like, and it becomes frustrating. But then that only reaffirms what I like about myself, or what I like about the stuff I make for myself and in my own process, which then makes it kind of more personal, which makes it more private, which further fragments like what I share and don't share. So it's kind of all over the place, to be honest. And like as far as deciding what's a good photo and what's a bad photo, I don't really know. It's like it just is kind of like a gut feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's that secondary motion of trying to decide, if people see it or where it goes, and if you'll share it and not. And I guess like the one great decider is I always just try to put out work that's better than before and try not to stagnate. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be better technically or subject wise or for any reason other than that it represents that I tried something new and different and challenge myself a little bit. So I guess that's kind of like a big emotional deciding factor of it all as well.
You're the true artisan. That's awesome. So, photography has taken such a change. I mean, remember when you've been doing it longer, or, as a professional photographer, and I didn't do the photography, I just was the producer. I would shoot video and edit and stuff, but I noticed a change. It would be about, I guess now, like 15 years ago, that was when GoPro first came out. I think is when we were really starting to hit our stride filming. And I've noticed this progression where with clients, with just overall in content, the rise of GoPro, the rise of cameras on phones, there's a saturation of photography that just never existed before. And there was such a difference before when you were considered this like really specialized artisan and professional around photography, and it was highly valued. Do you see, how do you see it changing, or how has it changed, and where's the future of professional photography? Where do you see it? I know it's a long conversation, but I want to give you a runway to kind of, I'm going like, this is arc of change, and I'm just curious to see where you see it's going to go.
That's another great question. I don't really know. I think like 10 years ago, I never would have imagined the proliferation of smartphones and GoPros. Or maybe 15 years ago. I've only been shooting photos for about 10 years. And I'd say 10 years ago is really when like GoPros and smartphones and stuff really took off. And even then the quality was so low, wouldn't have seen it, where they've just become everyone's tool, everywhere constantly. And I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's not so much. There's photography is kind of like fine art, films and movies and stuff, where there has always been and will always be a niche, but the vast majority of people just want to consume content that's interesting and happens rapidly. And so this is evolution. It's not a revolution. And you look at the way that everyone's now armed with the camera, and like if you took the 100 most amazing moments that happened in 2019 that were captured like 15, 20 years ago, it'd all be by AP and Reuters photographers. And now last year, it was probably 99% by people with iPhones and GoPros. And there's still so much room and space for beautiful photos and photojournalism and fine art photography and stuff. But it's kind of the niche of it has been more clearly defined. And then the rest of the world of photography has been democratized by literally every single person having a 10 megapixel camera in their hand now. So I don't think it's not going to change in the way that like a lot of photographers say it's doom and gloom. I think it's like the niche of good photography is more clearly defined. And then the amount of content being created by the general public, the billions of people on this planet who all now have smartphones, is just greater, stronger, and more prevalent. And then that's where Instagram and social media is just this like vessel to share that media immediately.
And that's another, interesting question is about, distribution. Where before, I think a lot of, professionally shot photos and stuff, everything was paid, and, you had the rights to, and now people liberally share, professional work. How do you see that, impacting or positively or negatively in the future, or has it?
I take a hard line about trying to control like who uses my photos and where they go, and centralize it back to myself. And that kind of stymies your growth a bit in this day and age in social media. Like the most successful people are just people that like spam the internet, and have their work everywhere. But at the same time, by having like kind of a centralized hub of where my work is and people being able to find it through me, it has helped me define like kind of an artist profile very well. And so I think like there's no real right way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to share work and how it will seed out on the internet. I don't like, a lot of people there's multiple different camps, and they kind of feud with each other about that in a kind of a professional sense. But I really don't think there's a right and wrong way. It just really is more like what you want your outcome to be. And I think by controlling my own experience and really like making sure that the only people that share my work are kind of licensed and authorized to do so, and either compensate me accordingly or do it and point towards my kind of ecosystem, it's really like kind of fortified, my branding. Whereas like you see other people, other photographers in this day and age, and they have their work everywhere and it's great. But then 10 minutes later, the next hottest thing comes along, and they don't really have this like, castle that people can reference and look to and see all their work and their stuff anymore. Prior 10 years ago, that was like having a website. Your website was like the vanguard of your outward representation and stuff. And now it's not a website anymore. That's like one little element. It's more like having a cyber brand, where people can see you and explore your ecosystem of social media and your cyber presence very efficiently.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, that I mean, I think there's such a mixed bag of different ways that the people are doing it. But what I've noticed about you is that you are highly differentiated. And that's, part of the reason I was super stoked to be able to do my rebrand, and I'm starting to use the content that I'm licensing from you, for my brand, because it's kind of congruent and it's, again, really differentiated. And today with social media and everything being so visual, and there's so many people pumping out photography, I guess sort of like an extension of that same question is a little bit about the value of photography. In some ways, I initially was thinking, well, it's kind of going down because everybody's got it. But now I'm thinking it's the other way, because now more than ever, there's so much stock, individualized photography, creating I guess you could say sort of a family of imagery that evokes a certain motion, feeling, or brand is potentially really differentiating, because in the sea of like so many different images and so many different things, it's hard for people to kind of recognize, like through photography. They can through a brand, right? Like they recognize the logo, but through photography, a look and feel. So, for example, when I first was drawn to your work, I licensed all your black and white stuff because I was just doing all black and white as my branding because I wanted to be differentiated. And I'm shifting that now. And so my question to you is, do you think that there's even more opportunity than before? Like it's almost like the world's even cracked open wider for the potential for you?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not certain. It's hard to say, because at the same time, like I can explore the internet. I can literally direct message brands and say, I want to work with you, and walk on set and have a photo shoot with them, or license them a bunch of work or whatever. It's amazing how the opportunities that have unfolded from this connectivity, and then vice versa, the way brands have been able to found me and find me and communicate with me. But the flip side is, it's become more competitive and like I said, democratized, where like there's a lot of other photographers that are. I I hand coded my website when I was 18 in Flash, and it was a nightmare, but it was insane. And then Flash, very shortly after, I switched. When Apple kind of decidedly killed Flash on all, or refused to support it on all iOS devices, and the iPad started taking off, I switched to something called Indexibit. And that was like, I had to learn MySQL and all this crazy, and JavaScript and stuff. And I loved it. I mean, web design and is one of my biggest passions, actually. And like, I was obsessed with it. But I was spent so much time and energy on it, and then you'd come across another photographer that literally didn't have a website, and you're just like, oh, that's funny. And I think it's like like I said, it's all over the place, where you can put all this stuff out, and you can have these incredible opportunities and stuff, but there's now just a lot more areas to succeed, and areas that you need to cover your grounds, and like between websites and social media and marketing and everything. And then minutes later, someone else can just pop up from India and just be an amazing photographer that literally just signed up for an Instagram, and they have 1 million followers out of thin air. And and that's amazing, because I mean, I guess maybe that's what I've done to other photographers around the world. Because it's not like this like one-on-one rat race sort of thing, but it's like, it's not a big, the photography industry is not a big world, and creative agencies and art buyers and stuff are constantly scouring to work with people, and it's all done via your phone and social media and social networks, and like your outward representation is what pushes you forward. It's free marketing, and and that's where some people really get it, some people really don't. I try to pour as much time and energy into that as possible, because if I don't, you feel like you're losing footing to other people sometimes.
Interesting. And the one thing that also, let's say one thing, but one of the other things I thought I really like, and I'm curious about your journey there, is the photo and video. So there are people who are specifically video, and there's people that are specifically photo. My crew was like you, that do photo and video, which was a differentiated thing for us to get as most content when we're shooting in the heli, more per minute, and that actually did really well for us. That's what kind of really helped our success. What was your journey like? Was one first, or did you always do both?
I started out making little films in junior high and high school, just with like a handy camera, and that I was really passionate about. And so after high school, I started saving up money and like investing into my own kind of filmmaking, and I really wanted to pursue that. And I was learning that kind of faster and faster, and pouring more of my time and energy into it and money. And at the same time, I was like, I should try photography just to take photos to kind of accompany my films. And then, ironically, photography is what really took off and turned into a career. So film kind of went into hiatus for a couple of years, and then it's probably like 22 or 23, and I just pulled the trigger on getting a red and just wanted to start making films, and I just really wanted to learn the red, and I started renting my red back to Quicksilver and hiring people to film, and while I'd be shooting photos, so I could kind of control the aesthetic. But in reality, my heart always lied with making films, and that's where it still is. Photography is very much so a secondary tier, like kind of passion and pursuit of mine. So, but I juggle both kind of accordingly, because photography is way easier and less time consuming, I guess, in the grander scheme of things. Um, and so I try to do both pretty symbiotically now these days, because it's cool to build out like these kind of broader visions and projects and looks and feels to things.
Totally. I love that the photos and the video can work together. Like it's from this, I can tell it's from the same shoot. That's to me is like what is a rarity as well. And that's another really interesting differentiation that you have. And you have this one that's really interesting. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes. It's called Fizzer, I think it is. I can't remember. It's what's it called?
Fishers.
Yeah, you mentioned that was like one of your most challenging projects. Explain why.
It wasn't challenging per se. It was that like I made that as kind of a culmination of about 2 years of just random little bibs and bobs of things I'd filmed, whether it was for big commercials or it was for just like random days around home or traveling. And I just pieced it together, and I kind of just made this like aesthetic, like visual narrative of like a dream where it just gets darker and darker and lighter and lighter. And so I was experimenting with using like kind of a longer form color correction and music and visual cues and stuff. But it was just I don't know. Yeah, it wasn't like harder or more complicated to make so much as it was just like it was just a bit of a different approach. It wasn't like flying to Africa and making a film in Africa, coming home and cutting it sort of thing. It wasn't really black and white.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I think you said it was like maybe one of your more ambitious projects or something. I can't remember. I just remember looking through your body work and I was like, oh, cool. I wonder what was behind this.
Cool.
So before we kind of wrap up, I wanted to kind of just dive in a little bit with just like kind of a bit of a forward-looking, what's ahead for you? Like now with COVID, were you surfing? Like, were you doing filming on the surf tour, or do you just do lifestyle? Like, I never forgot to ask you that.
No, so I used to work in the surf world exclusively from like when I was about 20 to 23,
Mm-hmm.
24. I was working for Quicksilver and doing a lot of projects with like Red Bull and Monster and like other surf brands. And then later on, I worked a bit for Billabong Women's. And but around 2014, I really got back into filmmaking and started kind of like pulling some really big commercial clients. So I do that. That usurps about 2/3 of my time, and then surfing is my number one passion. Like even as just me personally, like I love surfing and I love shooting it, obviously as an extension of my passion. And so from the friends and connections I made when I was doing surfing full time, and then just my own personal interest in it, I still do like even just using last year's example. Like I went to South Africa um, and filmed with Jordy and Steph. And then I went to Indonesia. I did a trip for O'Neill with their team and started making a bunch of videos with them. And so like I'll do a couple surf projects a year and go to like one event and do like 2 or 3 trips, to tropical places or surfing action or stuff. And it's usually the premise of my presence is to like shoot, like girls wearing bikinis or guys wearing trunks, like the branded lifestyle stuff. But then I just go wild shooting whatever surfing or travel stuff is along
Like
the
sort of
way.
off on the side.
Yeah. So like as far as like last year and the year before and stuff, like there's usually big Corona beer shoots, there's Mercedes car shoots, there's, stock image commissions for Estee Lauder or whatever and stuff like that. That's what really commands most of my time. And then like a large part of it too is I work, like I said, like a lot of fine art sales and working with art buyers and interior designers and like whether it's commissions or like making prints and and dealing with that stuff.
Is
I
that
keep
them grabbing a piece of work and asking you to do something with it, or are they going, "I want a photo that looks
exactly
like this"?
exactly like I'll work with an interior designer like in the Hamptons, and she'll say my client really wants photos of this one island that she vacations on in the Bahamas, and I'll go there and spend a week trying to capture it to the best of my ability for them to have big photo prints in their house. Or like it could be anything, just use as an example, it could be like a palm tree or a squirrel or whatever. And so those commissions are a lot of fun because I have a lot of space and time to work alone.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's a very lucrative kind of part of my asset of my
I
business.
want to hire you to do a photo commission for my house, dude. That sounds awesome. I never even heard of that. That's interesting. I mean, I've heard people do commissioning photo, but never like, hey, go to the island. It's something we love. Come back with pictures, and we want you to, create something really meaningful for us. I've never heard that. That's really original.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, it kind of blew me away when it started happening, but like it now probably is. I'd say is about 25% of my time and energy is spent doing that, like in the realm of traveling and shooting. Um, and it's I think it's not something like I don't think I've ever even told anyone I
Is
do
it word
this
of
except for
mouth?
when people. Yeah, it's like I've never outright advertised it or mentioned it or even like openly told someone unless they said, "Hey, why were you in Barbados last week?" And I go, "Well, I was sent there to shoot this one cove." And get like an evening time sunset shot of it to be printed. And they go, "Oh, cool." And then 6 months later, that person turns another art buyer or a interior designer onto me, and it just kind of has slowly and stably evolved over the last 4 years. But it's like I didn't really, like I said, it blew me away when it started kind of happening. Um, and it's great. And it also kind of, you know what, I think like if I can kind of pinpoint it to starting where an interior designer would go, "Hey, do you have any photos of palm trees at sunset?" And I go, "No," but I have palm trees in the daytime, and they say, "We really like your palm trees in the daytime. Can you recreate this in the evening time? Same tree, same location, same backdrop, same composition, just evening tones and colors." And I go, "Sure." And that's kind of, I
And
think
if that shot
that
was in Tahiti, you're on a plane to Tahiti to do that shot.
exactly, yeah. I quote them a
That's
budget for
fucking
the travel
awesome,
and
dude.
like, and
That
yeah.
I've never heard this in my life. This is insanely cool.
It's a very 1 percentile sort of
Yeah.
clientele.
Oh,
It's
yeah, for
kind of
sure. But it's representing
like
25% of your
in my
business and it's
realm
all word of mouth.
and
That's
yeah, like
exceptional.
in my life and lifestyle and my family and my upbringing, like I would never like my house is filled with little books and art pieces and gifts from friends and paintings and stuff I've
Mhm.
collected. Like I would never imagine that. But then you look at the art history of, of the centuries past, and that's like some of my favorite paintings and the vast majority of art actually ever made in the history of mankind was commissions based upon, artists found by people and them commissioning paintings of themselves or still lives or places or things. So it's kind of it's kind of funny. It's like full circle, but like in a very weird, strange way. I
And
don't
when you
know.
say art, are you shooting photos of artwork as well?
No,
Okay.
no, 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 no. I mean, like I'm talking about like if you look at like Monet or
Oh, right.
Picasso
Yeah.
or like Leonardo da Vinci and stuff or um, those guys were commissioned by like high courts and the Vatican or whatever. And when I'm shooting this stuff, it's not art. It's just photos of like
Yeah, I know.
whatever.
I got that. I was
Like
wondering, do you shoot photos of art?
oh
Okay.
no
Yeah.
no.
That's like almost like a studio shoot style, right?
Yeah, like if I was a famous painter and had works I needed to be displayed on the internet or in a book, you would hire like you'd go to a full
Hmm.
studio or have someone come and photograph it very professionally with like certain set of lenses and lighting and whatever.
Yeah. And is it fair to say that your, unique point of difference or focus has been on natural light?
Oh,
Yeah.
always, yeah. I probably have used a flash or artificial light maybe uh, for a total of like 2 times or 2 days in my entire
Oh,
life.
wow.
I can't stand it.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
that's like our crew. Everything was natural light. It felt weird when we used flashes, and sometimes we do a couple night shoots with flashes around the helipad, and just for like with the team, if we had to get the team rider in or something, and that it just felt so alien compared to all the rest of the stuff that we did.
Yeah. I've never liked the look of it. Like in photos, I can just always tell, even before I started shooting photos or knowing anything about cameras. I remember being like a teenager, and I mean, I was more obsessed with skateboarding than surfing
Hmm.
even. And I remember going through skate mags, and they'd always have flashes and strobes and stuff, and I thought it looked so dumb. I hated it. And then same with surfing, like they'd always shoot flash at night, and I remember being like 12 or 13, having never touched a camera greater than like the disposable CVS cameras, and just thinking the flash in the photos looks so stupid. And that really, I honestly have never, like I said, I've never touched a flash. I think I've shot once inside of a studio and it had natural lighting, and then maybe one time I had like a on camera like kind of like I think they're called HEDs. It's like a night light thing, and I shot night skateboarding with it. But it was like a floodlight sort of thing. It wasn't like a proper flash. And then it just does not aesthetically. It's so aesthetically out of my interest that I just never even bothered to try it, or learn it.
Yeah, maybe it's like more technical than artisan, and
It is. I have a lot of. I mean, like we had a big college in Santa Barbara that shut down a couple years ago called Brooks Institute, and people would spend a year learning Flash there. Like it was a full regimented course, and so as much as I admonish it and talk smack about it, I mean the people that I wouldn't know, like someone would call me and say, "Hey, can you light this setup?" And I say, "I don't even know what that entails." And these people it is wizardry. It's like having a specialized skill.
mhm.
So I mean, like the way people can light studios and light shots is it's very impressive. It's like a different language. I don't know it. I don't speak it. So I do totally respect the amount of skill that is behind that though.
What is your most favorite shoot you've ever done?
Um, I'm not certain. I'd probably say there's two. I'd say probably this last one, this trip to Iceland, was probably my favorite.
Even though you were
And then
terrified, just was the body of
yeah,
work really
it
good, or
was
just
just
the
so
challenge?
out of body. Just
Hmm.
the beauty of the frozen lake it's otherworldly. It felt like I was visiting another planet.
Hmm.
Um, I've camped in the Kimberleys for a couple weeks. That was breathtaking. That's in northern Australia.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the most beautiful place in the world I've ever been. And then probably as far as like a moment in time or like an accomplishment or anything, I think like I went to Mexico when I was 20 with Stephanie Gilmore, and it was kind of one of my first big shoots. And I was like very, very impressed and ready to shoot her surfing and very honored to be there. And the surf just got better and better. And Kelly Slater showed up. Quicksilver sent him down. And that was just like out of body kind of. And we had a couple days of just like breathtaking waves and world class, like probably some of the best waves I've ever seen in my entire life. And so that whole trip was just like really, I mean, like I could have died the next day and just like would have been the happiest person alive just to be with my heroes sort of thing. And in perfect waves in a beautiful place. And so I don't know. I mean, like actually kind of, I relish every trip. The only trips I don't really I mean, there's been trips where I've gone somewhere and it's just rained for 20 days straight. I've been in Tahiti and it's literally rained for 10 days. And instead of leaving, I doubled down and stayed for another 10. And it's rained for another 10. And even those days, like our trips were really cool. I think the only trips I really ever get bored on or don't like cherish are the ones that are slightly redundant. Like I go to Hawaii probably up until last year, I'd go to Hawaii every month, if not sometimes twice a month. And sometimes it'd just be like, hey, shoot this bikini on this beach on the east side of Oahu. And then 2 weeks later, I'm back there doing the same thing. And I try to make it fun and cool, but like it can be a bit redundant.
Like Groundhog Day.
And yeah, a little bit. I can't complain about it. I mean, that's like, honestly, it's such an amazing job and lifestyle. And like it's seriously, yeah, there's nothing to complain about, but like, it does quaffle your creativity a bit. Whereas like, I mean, the shoots where I was uncomfortable, like being in the rain for 20 days and confused and stuff, were oftentimes some of the most creative and fun moments. Cause it also just, you have this realization you're in the middle of nowhere and the ball's in your court to either sit in your room and do nothing, or go out and explore and do something really cool. So,
well, I actually licensed one of your rain ones, I think from Tahiti. I don't know if it was from the same trip, but it's super cool. You're shooting the raindrops that were coming down like these freaking baseballs onto the ocean floor. It was fucking cool.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I love rain. Like I probably spend when it's raining, I'm like out 24/7. So
why do you think that is?
Like, I don't know. I just think it's very aesthetically pretty, and so I love shooting in it. Whereas a lot of other people, I think, are because you worry about your camera getting wet or you're cold or you just don't have fun in the rain. I have so much fun in the rain, so that's always kind of like I've never had an issue with that, to be honest.
There's a I can't remember what it's called, but there's something that's activated whether you're moving through snow, water, and rain. It's and for some people, it actually energizes them. I can't remember what it's called right now. If I remember it, I'll put it in the show notes. But it's some people actually get a lot of energy from that. Cool. So maybe that has something to do with it. Because I'm the same way. I love rain when I'm around the ocean, in the ocean, or if I'm snowboarding, and I'm getting all that blower power around me. I'm just like juiced.
Yeah, same.
I'll remember it. I'll email you when I recall what it is. But it's an actual thing. So I was going to ask you about Kelly Slater. So did you shoot with him again at another time, or just that one shoot?
No, we traveled together pretty extensively. We shot in Australia, France, Marshall Islands, Tahiti, California. I mean, I worked for Quicksilver for probably 3 years. And then he left Quicksilver actually, and I left shortly after too. And we still shoot a lot together. I mean, not the last year. We don't really we'll like cross paths. We'll be in Hawaii and we'll go get dinner, or we'll go like chip golf balls in his yard, or like we'll meet up and go for a surf or something, or like at Rincon or whatever, or go get a coffee and stuff. But like as far as like traveling and doing like full-blown surf trips, he doesn't really do that many of them anymore. Even he was doing like tour events and then just focusing on like his businesses and just like posting up at one of his houses and just chilling in Hawaii or chilling in Australia. But we traveled a lot together, I think. I mean, and then we just always, even when we weren't traveling together, we just cross paths and hang out and shoot more photos and do fun stuff. He's been a incredible friend for almost like a decade now, I think, actually.
Well,
since I first met him in Mexico.
Incredible. And, I mean, it's some people you just get a sense from all the video footage and, behind the scenes stuff. And he just seems like such a really warm, really cool guy.
Yeah, he's incredibly intelligent, and he's like, he has almost like a perfect memory. It's terrifying, but it makes him this encyclopedia of stories and knowledge, and so every second you're with him is it's fascinating. And he's wicked funny. He's got a really like kind of weird sense of humor, and that's what we kind of really bond on. And like, I mean, I haven't seen him in probably 3 months or so, 4 months. And we still we text every day, and we just send each other like the internet. Like we both geek out on the internet super hard. We just go pretty deep and dark on it and send each other really random stuff. But it's pretty funny. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So have you shot his surf ranch?
Yeah. I've been to it a couple times. I'm not really a fan of wave pools, to be honest. I don't really go out of my way to go there, but like I went there. I had to do a Kellogg's shoot with Steph Gilmore, and I'd been to it once or twice prior. I actually went to it when he bought it. When he bought it, it was just dirt, mm-hmm. and he bought a big dirt lot that was like a drainage pool for a farm irrigation thing or something. So it's kind of pre-excavated, and we drove out together, and I filmed him like holding the dirt in his hands, like the day
wow.
he like took the keys to the place. It was pretty
cool. That's a moment in time.
Seeing it then and seeing it now, it's pretty surreal. But I just personally, it's like I don't know, it's like 5 hours from where I live, and it's in the middle of the desert. It's either freezing cold or blazing hot there. And I just don't find myself there very often, but it's cool when you go. I mean, it's like a modern Marvel sort of thing.
Yeah. Did you get some really good shots? You must have.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, that's kind of personally why I don't go that much, is it's just like, it doesn't change much visually. There's really like nothing. So after like a couple of visits, I was like, well, I don't really need to shoot here anymore. So if I come again, I'll just be surfing.
Right. Unless the light somehow is dramatically changed, then maybe.
Yeah. And it does. It's arid desert. It's pretty monotone,
I'm curious about, what's your definition of a groundswell from just how do you differentiate? If you're going to explain to somebody the difference between a groundswell and a windswell, how would you describe it?
That's a good question. I'm not like, oceanography is fascinating to me, and it's like it's like also equally as hard to explain, like something like that. Like, I guess windswell is essentially like a groundswell, okay, start over. Basically, wind creates swell always. I mean, that's where like we get swells in California from New Zealand. It comes from wind events in New Zealand. The difference is the fetch. And so, like, for example, if there was wind in California and it would make little waves that would lap on the shore, what would be them, like half a meter high or whatever, not very big, that would be wind swell. It's like very tertiary to the environment. Whereas groundswell, I think I don't know what defines it exactly, but I would define it in my own knowledge and understanding as saying that would be where it travels a certain amount of time, the period stretches out, and the swell it goes from being like a very domestic wind swell to being a very long range, powerful swell that is capable of covering a long distance and having a lot of power to it. And those usually come from larger storms where if you're in the storm, if you're in a boat, you'd sink or die. But the swell is able to project out at such distance that it can cover so much water and not lose its momentum. Whereas wind swell, like it could blow wind in Central California, and by the time it gets to Southern California, that swell has dissipated, it's lost its energy. Whereas a ground swell can traverse the whole Pacific Ocean and maintain its energy, if not become better and cleaner and stronger from a surfer's perspective.
Totally. And the some of the photos that just I literally don't like, if it comes up on my feed or if I see it, I don't click through it very quickly. I sit and stare at are those either aerial or up on cliffs, and seeing these sets of long lines like corduroy, marching towards the shore. I don't know, that's when that's why I decided to call my business Groundswell, was just that visual. And there was one photo set that I got from you that was that had that feeling. It was like these stacked, beautiful, blurred lines. The visual of it's just really powerful to me. I don't know.
Yeah, that to me is like symbolic of just ocean energy. It's the absolute moment and aspect of beauty, for something that I love, surfing, waves, ocean, and it's just so clean and crisp.
Yeah, I think you described it perfectly. It just represents this really organized energy that you knew that came from far away, and it's powerful, and the potential of what it can produce and how much fun it can be if you're the one that's right in the right place at the right time is incredible.
Exactly.
Well, hey, thank you so much for being on this show. This has been it's been so great to work with you and have you on this show. Do you want to share with everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and it's great to. It's always fun to wrap out, especially. You ask questions that are kind of relative to the marketing and business side of things, and I love talking about that because I think it's fascinating, and it's like you deal with it every day, and it's like at the same time, it's not like you can get an MBA in photography or anything. It's like but yeah, it's been really cool getting to know you and work with you. And so to reiterate, my name is Morgan Maassen, and I have a website. It's just my name. It's MorganMaassen. And I have a lot of my videos on Vimeo and on my website, and I have a lot of my photos on my website and Instagram and Facebook, and it's just it's kind of all over the place. So yeah, you'll find I spam the internet pretty hard, so you'll see my work kind of everywhere if you look for it.
That's right. Thank you again for being on the show, and his work is incredible, guys. So, you're going to go to groundswell.fm and .marketing, and you'll start seeing that a lot of his photography will be, and video stuff will be on there as I kind of rebrand and relaunch. And I just want to thank you again for working with me and being on the show. This is just a great honor. And photography and marketing, they live together. And so I haven't had anybody talk about photography yet on a marketing show, and I think it's completely relevant. And thank you again so much for your insights, photography, and I'm looking forward to sharing this episode. So thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
You bet. I heard a little
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just was screenshotting an email.
I thought, well, that's a great little touch at the end of this video. It's ironic.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, I know that was so funny. No. Sorry about that. I was just screenshotting an email with some work instructions.
All good. Hey, and everyone that's listening, thank you for listening in. As always, go to groundswell.fm. There's a microphone called SpeakPipe. Just click it. I just had someone ask me some great questions yesterday. In fact, when I jump off this, I'm on a call with her. So leave me a voicemail. Until next time, mahalo.